A process, as did the prior administration, where we consider every case that we think is truly appropriate to consider for the death penalty, and there are several different people who talk about it, including one of my first assistants who is a retired judge who heard homicide cases for probably 15 or 20 years and was also a homicide prosecutor at one point. We have some people in the committee who believe in the death penalty. We have other people who are dubious about the death penalty, but I can tell you that the result is we consider every case individually. Part of that consideration is always trying to get input from the family of the person who has died, from those folks. And we don't just do that for homicide cases. We try to do it for every case. You will see reports in the press about isolated instances where people say we didn't contact them. Well, a lot of times we did. And they were sent multiple letters and they didn't respond. And then after something happened, they come out and say, oh my goodness, you didn't contact me. Well, we try to contact everyone, and we try to do it with more than a single effort. And I spend a lot of my time sitting in rooms with people who have lost a child or have lost a brother or sister and talking to them about these issues. Some of those people do not want anything to do with the death penalty. I know there was a lot of coverage about a case I can talk about because it's over. But there was a lot of coverage about the terrible killing of Sergeant Wilson, who was murdered before our administration began by two brothers who were on a spree of gunpoint robberies, and the whole thing was especially in the press because it was videoed. His killing in crossfire from two different assailants was videoed, and because Sergeant Wilson had been heroic in drawing fire away from other people who were inside the store where he'd gone to buy his son a birthday gift, right? That was a case where there was a lot of attention, and there were two family members who really wanted the death penalty. And there were the mothers of his children who really didn't. It is not the case that every member of the family feels the same. In many cases, it is not the case that all victims always want the death penalty. It is the case that some of them do. I'm not going to sit here and say that I dislike or don't like how they feel about it. They feel how they feel about it. They have been through terrible trauma. It is a trauma that makes them, needless to say, go through an awful lot, and I respect their opinion on this point, whatever it may be. I also respect people who have not gone through trauma, but who happen to think that the death penalty is okay, right? We listen to that. That's what we are supposed to do. Families do not get a vote. They do not get a veto. They get a voice. They get a voice in our office. To the best of my knowledge, none of my predecessors actually sat down with the family, but I do it, and I do it all the time, and it's not easy. They get a voice in the office, and they get a voice in the courtroom. By law, they are permitted to stand up, and they are permitted to express themselves to a judge at the time of sentencing and to explain their feelings on a particular topic. And there's no one in our office, honestly, stopping anybody from going to the press either. As long as there's no gag order from a judge, they can also do that. Some of them do not like what we do. Some of them do like what we do, but we do it honestly. We consider every case specifically. And the decisions we have made thus far are the decisions that we have made. Does that answer the question or not really?
I think so. How do you know you're picking a jury that's open to other types of sentencing and not just one that is stuck on the death penalty?
Well, all my favorite people here. How do I know that? So I think what this, we do not have jury sentencing in Pennsylvania. There are some states where juries actually sentence. Probably a remarkably bad idea, but regardless, it's not what we do in Pennsylvania. The only sentence that juries do decide is death or life. And they only decide that if the Commonwealth, meaning the prosecution, has sought the death penalty. And then they only decide it if the jury has already found guilt in the first degree. And then after they find guilt in the first degree, there's a second trial that happens in front of the same jury, which is a trial about whether this person should live or die, right? My administration has not done that. We have not sought the death penalty in any case, so we have not done that. As an attorney, I did that. As an attorney, I've defended people who were facing the death penalty. I even did a death phase for one of them. And, also in my 20s, served on a death penalty jury as a juror before I went to law school. so I have some familiarity with it. I think what this question really goes to is the fact that when you seek the death penalty, you get a jury that says they're A-OK with the death penalty. And that is a jury that is much more likely to convict in the case itself. It is a much more law and order, conviction-prone type of jury. And I'm not saying that to be critical. I'm just telling you this has been studied at length. It has been studied academically and scientifically. You're going to get a heck of a lot more convictions out of a jury composed of 12 people who are A-OK with the death penalty in a society where most people are opposed to the death penalty. So a lot of prosecutors actually used seeking the death penalty as a way to tweak the verdict on guilt. They wanted to stack the jury. And then they might even back down on pursuing the death penalty after they got the verdict they want. You know, they might cut a deal saying, if you give up your appeal, we'll give up the death penalty, because it was really just a trick to try to get a jury that they viewed as being biased in their favor. These are not issues that this administration has had, because we have not pursued the death penalty, and therefore we have not picked a death penalty qualified jury, and so we have eliminated that aspect of bias. As I said before, though, every homicide case we consider before the death committee, or, well, that's not quite what we call it the homicide sentencing committee, will be considered individually on its merits, and we will make decisions.
Thank you. Another question from the audience. Can the death penalty be abolished, and what would it take to make that happen, and who could make such a decision?
So it can be abolished in Pennsylvania. It has been abolished in many, many states, including New Jersey, where all the district attorneys got together in favor of abolishing the death penalty a long time ago. It can be abolished. It has been abolished in many locations. What it requires is for our state legislature to pass a law that says get rid of the death penalty. And then it requires a governor who's either not going to veto it or his veto would be overridden. Governor Wolf does not like the death penalty. He declared a moratorium on carrying out the death penalty. And a bipartisan commission spent 3 years studying the death penalty, and they came out with a report about 3 or 4 months ago that said this is a mess. It's, you know, you're executing people of low intelligence, you are executing people of color overwhelmingly and in a discriminatory fashion. You're not paying anything like the money you need to pay for the quality defense counsel you would need to do these cases. This whole thing is a mess. That's what they said. And so there is a little bit of a push in the direction of abolishing the death penalty. It is also true, and this is a really important insight, I think. It's true that if you look at Pennsylvania and if you look at other states, you'll see that there are fewer and fewer death verdicts. This is probably the best poll you could ever do as to how the public actually feels about the death penalty. Lynn Abraham used to brag about how she got death verdicts, I believe, I forget the exact number, 109 or 119 times over the space of her term of 19 years. She was bragging because she was getting a death sentence every few months, every couple months. There were no death sentences in Philadelphia last year during our administration. The year before, 1 or 2. The year before, only a couple. I mean, that tells you something. When you're getting 5 in a single city, and then statewide, we're looking at 5, over the course of a year, and then statewide, we're looking at only a death sentence or 2 in the entire state. It means that the public opinion on this has shifted dramatically. And now, I will say one more thing. I probably shouldn't, but I will, which is, for anyone who thinks that the death penalty is really deterrence, you may have seen that the DA's office made an arrest recently of 9 people, 8 of them indicted, for retaliatory shootings going back and forth between the 27th Street gang and 31st Street gang. It was done with our gun violence task force and with Attorney General Shapiro. It was a joint effort. What you're looking at there is a bunch of young people who are willing to kill someone else, knowing not that they might get arrested and that they might go to court and that in 25 years they might get a death sentence. They're willing to kill people knowing that they could get killed the very next day by the people they went after. And it's not stopping them. Anyone who thinks that the calculation going on in the mind of a young man who is somewhere between 15 years of age and probably 25 years of age is that they're sitting around saying, let me study the law of the death penalty in Pennsylvania before I load up this gun.
Exactly.
Is living in a fantasy world. And every bit of science around this reflects that. The only thing that really deters crime is fear of getting caught, number one. But here are people who are facing the reality that they may get shot tomorrow for what they do today, and they're doing it anyway. So there really is so little justification for the death penalty that I think they got it right when the bipartisan commission said it's a mess in Pennsylvania, and therefore I think there's a strong possibility that in the next 10 years, I would certainly prefer to say the next 2 years, we may see the abolition of the death penalty in Pennsylvania.
So there are still some outstanding questions, and we're probably not going to get to them because your office covers so much ground. It's kind of tough. So that's a good reason for you to come back again. We'll keep these questions in there. But we have two big topics we want to discuss. So the first one